the core, and we are breaking down some of our favorite core strengthening moves that you might see in some of our Pilates blend, core cardio and strength classes. But also, core should not be absent from your yoga practices. You should still be finding the core in all of these spaces, not just the Pilates and strengthening ones. So today we're going to focus on planks. We're going to talk about planks as we can move them in and out of our Pilates practices or classes. We're also going to talk about planks and how they might show up in your yoga practices, aka high plank, low plank, chaturanga flow, and all that good stuff. A couple of ideas we want to play around with when we are exploring planks is, one, do I feel this more in my shoulders and chest, as in do things feel as though they're collapsing, caving in, falling down? We want to notice that. Two, do I feel this as though my hips are making their way to the floor before any other part of my body is making its way to the floor? We want to notice that. Either of those two things, whether it's the top or the bottom, if you are feeling that there is a falling down that is not uniform throughout from the head to your toes, then we want to re-engage with a little bit more core awareness, but also perhaps add some support measures. What that would look like is there is no reason not to practice core maneuvers from a tabletop pose, which has shoulders on top of the wrists, hips on top of the knees. This is our most supportive beginning steps to our plank poses. Couple of things to notice here. Did my neck stay long, or am I pinching the back of it by looking up too far? Or am I making my head heavy by looking down too far? So for most of us, the gaze might be just slightly beyond where your fingertips are or towards the front edge of your mat, but it's never going to be back towards your heels or up towards the ceiling. That's just misaligning the whole structure of the neck. The other thing to be mindful of when we're coming into these spaces is, how am I spreading the weight on my hands? And if you feel your fingers curling and the back edge of your hand, the back edge of your palm, slamming into the floor, then the answer is absolutely yes. So we want to spread out through all the knuckles and feel the weight coming into the front edge of the palm as well, and then being displaced out through each and every knuckle on each and every finger, therefore alleviating some of the pressure that we might have been feeling in the back edge of the hand, which is going to cause wrist pain. If you take a look back, the knees are hip width apart as well as the feet, so we don't want feet super wide. We won't want them crisscrossed or even toes pointed in like they would be for child's pose. We want that nice level line from knee to the heel. And then we want to as well displace the energy so that your knees are pushing weight backwards towards the tops of the feet, so we don't feel as though we're just dropping into the knee joint itself. So this would be our first place for beginning to explore core movements. Our second option would then be to come into a modified plank. And you can see the difference here. Hips are now in front of the knees, but I'm still having all that engagement coming down the legs. And I'm still stacking shoulders on top of elbows, on top of wrists. Still spreading the weight out along those 5 fingers to make sure I'm not hurting the wrist joint itself. And then also still lengthening the back of the neck. So I'm not looking forward or upward, and I'm not looking backwards, letting my head fall down, trying to keep that same awareness coming up through the neck line. And then our final space would be to go to plank itself. We tuck the toes, we lift the hips, we lift the knees, and we stretch out. Here in this variation of a plank pose, you should feel as though the line coming up through the heels of your feet to the crown of your head is connected. There shouldn't be any breaks in that line whatsoever. We're looking down, shoulders, elbows, wrists, We're looking back, feet are hip width. We're lengthening the neck to the front of the room, pushing out through the head. And then let's just take a moment. So if in these practices of plank, you are looking for more support, and sometimes support may not have been offered to you at the beginning of the practice, but do feel welcomed to take the support, the modifications that make sense for your body. We can absolutely all be in the same practice together. We can absolutely all be working the same groups of muscles together, but we absolutely do not all have to look the same while we're doing it. And that's very important. We're not going to practice at the same pace, and we are not going to practice in the same way. Our bodies are all different. We're not robotic, and so therefore we can make way for those differences and enjoy them rather than try to conform so that we do all look the same. All right. So I promised you some plank poses. Let's go ahead and look at them. I will practice everything from plank today. However, just know that anytime you in your practices would like to practice from tabletop or from modified plank, those are options. I'll try to show them briefly, but I'm also going to try to get through this in short order so that I don't hurt myself. So let's come back into that first plank pose. And the first space that we're going to go to is a plank push down and then push back up. Now, if this were yoga, we might push down to low plank and then push up to chaturanga, but here we're just going to do push down, push up, and that is perfectly acceptable in both yoga practices and Pilates practices. So let's start by engaging all the way down through the palms of the hands, tucking the toes, finding your best tabletop, modified plank, or even high plank. And then we're going to take a deep breath in here in this space. Feel the length of your spine buzzing because it knows something good is about to happen. And then exhale, push towards the floor and push back up. Now you're going to feel work on both sides. The exhale lowering down, you feel that squeeze in. Oh, and the push back up, you're going to feel that that's powerful all the way up. Now we can modify it. Push down, push up. And we can even modify it in tabletop. Push down and push up. But wherever you're going from, there's no curves in the spine. There's no bulge in the shoulders. We're trying to keep this long plank-like body. Whoa, one more time. And we'll come up, take a breath, shake out those shoulders. So those would be our most standard plank movements. You can practice them on the wall. If for you, you are thinking, my arms are not ready to support this movement, you can practice on the wall. Let's pretend there's a wall right here. Let's pretend I'm standing up. We're just gonna hold the arms, push into the wall and push back out. Push into the wall and push back out. Over time, you can step those feet out further and further. So instead of being upright standing, you're leaning and pushing. All of these things help to build us into strong, stable planks rather than building us into a place where planks can cause pain and possibly injury. Second movement. I'm going to lift those back legs up. And I'm going to do one leg at a time, and then I'll alternate. Again, if it comes to mind, I'll show it with the modifiers, but we'll start with the high plank. So coming in, as you push back, lead with the heart. Feel as though your heart is shining forward, and therefore the chin is lifted just enough so the head doesn't get in the way of that heart light. Hold down through both of those hands, steady the weight into the left foot, and let's lift 1, 2, 3. So hips want to stay side by side. That way we know that we're stabilizing through the core. We don't want to feel rocking and dipping. This is 8, 9, 10. Come on back. Stretch those arms out. Lots of breaks are more than welcome. We don't have to go through everything in one fell swoop. Let's try that on the other side. I'll go for modified. Find your modified plank. Feel as though there's a hand on your belly and it's just holding it in place. We don't have to push up. We don't have to press hard. We just want to feel as though there's a presence there. So if your hips start to fall, if your belly starts to fall, you feel that right away. So let's move on to the left side. Shift the weight. Feel the support of the right leg. Stretch that left leg out. So we still stretch and we lift. 1, 2. Hold the engagement, that small presence. Feel your shoulders sliding down the back, neck pushing forward. Here, 6, 7, and 8. Nope, we're going to 10, 9, and 10. Come on back, take a quick moment. Breathe deeply. The reason we don't want the hips to go from side to side is that breaks our stability. That breaks the hold that we created. Let's do one more set, this time alternating, and I'm going to do it from tabletop this time, just to show what it would look like in a tabletop. So we'll start, tabletop won't work for this one. We're going to go back to plank. Sorry about that. So we're coming back, we're going to go right leg, left leg, lift up. Hold that head nice and high, neck is nice and long. Keep pressing all the way out through to the fingers, each and every knuckle. Push back through the heels. And I'm going to start counting for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Come on down, stretch it out. Shake out those arms, shake out those shoulders. We're going to do one last set. And with this set, we're going to work the other end, we're going to work those arms. I learned these to be called robots. I don't know why, and I don't even know if that's what they're really meant to be called. But that's the name that stuck with me. So I'm going to do a little bit of robots. I will show them from plank first, and then I will come down to modified plank, and then I will come down to tabletop. So starting with our robots, we're pushing back. Same thing, we want to stay pretty neutral left to right, and we're going to go right elbow, right hand, left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch, left, right, left, right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try it in modified. Knees down, hips slightly in front. Elbow, elbow, hand, hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch. Left, right, right. Elbow, elbow, hand, hand. Doing it from tabletop if that's your choice for this practice. Elbow, elbow, hand, hand. Right, left, left. Switch. Right, left, right. Elbow, elbow, hand, hand. Come on down. Through all of these movements, even though the core itself is not going anywhere, we're not crunching, we're not lengthening, we're not moving. We are lengthening, but we're not moving. We're keeping it still, stable, steady. The extremities are moving, but remember, all movement comes from the core, except for maybe your toes and your fingers. But if the core is not strong, if we don't have an awareness from the core, movement through arms and legs is not controlled. It's a little bit wild and loose. So pull it in, find that core. Even though the core is not moving, it is still working to coordinate movement. And that's what we want to think about when we're trying to find the core. Thank you so much for tuning in.